most well-known movies of Studio Ghibli is undoubtedly My Neighbor Totoro, which celebrates the innocence of childhood in a world of friendly forest spirits and magically growing trees. Following the success of this cult classic, director Hayao Miyazaki wanted to delve deep into the next step of life, the turbulent and formative period between childhood and adulthood. With this intention in mind, the studio released Kiki's delivery service, written, produced, and directed by Miyazaki himself.
It's one of our oldest customs that when a witch turns 13, she has to leave home for a year to begin her training.
Based on the Witch's Delivery Service books by Japanese writer Eiko Kaduno, the film tells the story of Kiki, a 13-year-old witch eager to leave her rural home as part of a traditional, self-guided study period in an imaginary European city, accompanied only by her talking cat Gigi.
This is just the kind of place I've always imagined.
This portrait of a strong, self-sufficient female protagonist would become a signature element of almost all Miyazaki movies, as he believes any woman is just as capable of being a hero as any man.
I just met you and I know I like you.
For many, Kiki's story isn't just a journey of self-discovery and growth, but it's also about how traditional lifestyles are adapting to contemporary ways of living.
When you fly, you rely on what's inside of you, don't you?
Uh-huh. We fly with our spirit.
Miyazaki once said he believes in the power of story, as stories have an important role to play in the formation of human beings, and they can stimulate, amaze, and inspire their listeners. And this is exactly what he does with this film. With all the ups and downs Kiki goes through, he celebrates life and all the journeys that come along with it.
My guest today to delve into Kiki's delivery service is Susan Napier, Professor of Japanese Studies at Tufts University. Hi, Susan. Good to have you on our show today. So, this is a realist Miyazaki movie. That sounds like an oxymoron to me, but please enlighten us. How is this even possible?
Well, it's kind of, you say, an oxymoron because the movie is technically about a witch. And witches are magical and supernatural, right? And in this case, Kiki is indeed a witch. Her mother is also a witch. She makes potions. Kiki rides on a broomstick. She has a black cat whom she talks to. But at the same time, the story and the setting are incredibly realistic. And that's one of the pleasures of the movie is you have this fantasy framework about a witch, but she goes to a city that is beautifully realized and utterly believable. It's based on some of Miyazaki's trips on location to Europe, especially to Scandinavia. And the movie kind of the city lives and breathes in a way that you can walk into it. And besides the setting, the other thing that is so believable is how psychologically credible all the characters are. This is not a story about a young witch doing crazy, weird, amazing things. It's about a young witch operating a delivery service in a town that she's never lived in before. And she flies on her broomstick, yes, but she delivers very prosaic things like, boxes and a stuffed animal for a little boy's birthday. And she's just a very believable young girl. She's 13. She's living on her own. She's trying to kind of navigate a new city, making friends, meeting a young boy who's interested in her, but she's sort of not confident about herself. And one of the best and most poignant and intense moments in the movie is when she kind of loses confidence. And it's expressed magically in that she loses her ability to fly. But I think we've all had moments when we lose confidence in ourselves. And in this case, what she says after she's lost her ability to fly is like, if I can't fly, I'm nothing. And that, again, is magical because she's talking about flying, but it's really about all of us when we confront a moment where we don't feel very strong or confident and we just feel like nothing. And it's that kind of believable character, believable dialogue, believable situations that are remarkably realistic for any kind of movie.
And the movie is incredibly progressive for its time when it comes to women's issues. I wonder how it compares to other Miyazaki leads.
Right from the beginning, Miyazaki was always particularly noticeably good at creating independent, interesting young female heroines. They're not always necessarily magical. Early on, he dramatized with his partner Takahata these very popular Western children's stories, such as Heidi of the Alps. And so from the start, he's had young girls who are again, very realistic, but also have a lot of resolve and dynamism and kind of toughness that makes them far more interesting than the average kind of sort of overly feminine, sort of scared, timid, only interested in clothes kind of girl that was much more typical of, say, Western children's animation. And these young girls only got better as he went on in his work. And his first really important female protagonist in his films is Nausicaa, who is in the movie Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind. And she lives in the 30th century, and she's a warrior and a princess, but she's also very compassionate, very concerned with people and with life around her, with nature. And she's smart, and she's a good scientist, and she can fly her own little kind of, it's called a mave, a little flying glider, and she's just extraordinary. So Miyazaki, right from the beginning, has had this interest in making interesting female characters.
It's
And
his
one reason he
trademark,
said,
really, isn't it? It's a very Miyazaki thing to do. And
Yeah.
actually, Steve Rose from The Guardian says that Kiki, quote, broaches female sexuality more boldly than any Western children's movie would dare. Would you agree on that? It's a bold statement, isn't it?
It is pretty bold. I was a little bit surprised because I do think Kiki does deal with, in many ways, fairly adult issues, not just sexuality, but also depression, as I said, when Kiki loses confidence, and loneliness, which are, kind of big deal grown-up issues that you don't necessarily see in most really children's anime. And there is, I don't know about sexuality, there's certainly an aspect of early romance in that Kiki has, when she arrives in this new city, she gets the interest of this young boy, Tombo, who kind of pursues her, but not in a weird way. Just he's fascinated by her because she can fly, and she seems like a really interesting person. And you get the sort of buddings of a potential romance there, but it's never pursued. It's never taken to its any kind of more romantic conclusion, which I also like, because this is a story about a young girl learning to navigate a lot of different things. It's not just a romance. And the only other sort of vaguely sexual thing I can think of is Kiki has this sort of mentor figure, an older woman named Ursula, who's an artist. And she's another great character, really interesting female character.
I mean, speaking of those challenges, another theme in the movie is the transition from traditional to contemporary. I mean, Kiki balances these both elements very well, but this makes me think, is this a commentary on the Japanese society, you think?
Yes, I absolutely think so. And it's one of the other great pleasures of the movie. Although, again, it doesn't just have to be Japanese, but definitely Kiki came out of the 1980s when Japan was going through a major, not just a modernization period, it had been modernizing for 100 years, but also a time of what they call kokusaika, or internationalization, in which the people were, especially young women, were traveling abroad, having adventures. They were real, and women in general were becoming more empowered, relatively speaking, in the society. So it was a very exciting time, but also a little bit nerve-wracking, and you see that again in the sort of Kiki's fact that she's going to a new city all by herself, which is kind of exciting.
Well, Susan Napier, thank you so much for bringing your valuable insight today on Showcase.
Thank you. Well, enjoy Kiki.